Rick, we heard the president lay out the particulars of this humanitarian assistance. He also then, in a separate statement, said, if Hamas diverts this stuff, if Hamas grabs this and it does not get distributed to the people, then this humanitarian pipeline would have to end.
Yes, it's very tricky. This was one of the goals of his trip, to initiate this humanitarian passage from Egypt into the West Bank, into Gaza. He succeeded in that. It may not develop exactly the way he wants because it is so very fragile and cumbersome. But that's a victory in and of itself.
There's also, we had video, we don't have it ready, of the president meeting with families of hostages and people who were first responders there, a doctor and others. And it was one of those emotional kinds of meetings. The president on the plane later just said that sometimes you just need someone to reach out to.
Yes, I mean, he's a man whose own life has been characterized by great grief. He has tremendous empathy. It was easy to see that. He has had this lifelong connection, many decades connection to Israel. But I also thought, Lawrence, that one of the most important things he said in his speech was, don't be consumed by rage. Mm-hmm. That was something that probably affected him in his own life. But he said, rage is not a good advisor. Grief is not a good advisor. Vengeance is not a good advisor. And he's learned that the hard way, and he even cited 9/11 in the U.S. and us and our overreaction to that.
Yeah, that was quite a striking thing for an American president to use an American mistake, as he sees it, as a teaching tool for another country.
Yes, I think it was quite extraordinary. And usually, you know, world leaders don't like to admit any kind of mistake. Not only did he admit the mistake, he said, I don't want you to make the same one.
He also, as I said in the first segment, he talked about alternatives to a ground invasion, said he spent a lot of time and that the American military is spending a lot of time talking to the Israeli military about alternatives to a ground invasion. And so I am not one of the people who have said, you know, the troops are poised on the border getting ready for an invasion, because I don't know that. I don't know that that's going to happen. And now I know even less about what's going to happen after the president's talking about alternatives.
Yes, it's not inevitable. I think that's another one of the achievements of the trip, where he said, look, don't make this something that you have to do. The consequences of it are very high. The risks are very high. So I thought that was something that was discussed. We might hear about it in his speech tomorrow. That's a real accomplishment, too.
So the White House announcement tonight is fascinating, because speech tomorrow at 8 o'clock. OK, you know, he's coming off of this historic and momentous trip. But the word Ukraine is in there, too. He's going to speak about Israel and Ukraine.
Yes. So he has talked about, since he was president, and you've talked about it many times, that we're at this inflection point in world history between the battle between democracies and autocracies. He's going to put this in that context. The Russian invasion of Ukraine, the terrorist attack against Israel, that the United States is trying to protect democracies, while these other countries that are supporting Hamas, that are supporting, including Russia, are trying to impose this kind of autocratic standard on the world. You know, he wants to say that we're the kind of indispensable nation and that we have to be fighting for that. That's a moral belief of his.
The president referred to his ambassador to Egypt working on this humanitarian aid route through Egypt. State Department is obviously going to be on the ground in Israel, in Egypt, working 24 hours a day on this, even though the president is not in the region.
Yes, of course. And, you know, a number of people said that President Sisi did this a little bit reluctantly. He wants to be able to see that this is successful. People will be doing everything they can, working around the clock to make it a success.